All right, this is game three of Tezuka versus Delial for the TTAC15 semifinals, and I think Tezuka did something brilliant that may come to haunt him here. So the rule set is all rules, same plus plus wall, same wall combo. 3, 6, 9, 10. Must use two level 10s, one of each other. Or at least you can use up to, whatever. You have to use at least one of each, but you're going to use two level 10s. They made a gentleman's agreement not to use Hildebrand Manderville, which I am very pro. And you must use one of your level 10s, must start with the same first letter as the opponent's username. So in this case, what's 6868 named? Sorry, I got distracted. But so Delial and Tezuka are presumably the usernames they count here. Maybe the Thin White Duke counts, but I don't think so. I mean, it's got to be Delial or Tezuka. So Tezuka's using Squall, which does not start with a D, and 6868, which presumably does start with a D. But Delial has to use something starting with a T. And how do you counter an entire letter? Well, if you look at the cards that start with T, and you look at the good ones, like remove, we all like Taloon, but 9658, you remove things like that. You're left with Takesis, which Delial used in game one, and apparently Tezuka straight up predicted, or one of a bevy of A865s. Like looking at that set, I think I'd use Tifa or Terra. Titus is also an option. All the A865s start with the letter T. Sorry, this just loaded, so I want to check. Dune's Folk La La Fell. Okay, that's the date. Is the 6868. I didn't know the name of that card. So you look at the T's, and suddenly 6868 actually just counters them. That card dominates Takesis. It is amazing against A865s. It's amazing against Taloon as well. There's a couple other options. 63A9, it's very good against. It's not going to be as good against 9s, but that's not a card it's unhappy to see. Yeah, that card kills the T's, and I think was an amazing pick by Tezuka. I know it's a card he's done well with in the past and likes in general, but he made a prediction and played a card that not only plays well against the prediction, it plays well against almost everything else as well that Delhi could run. Which is why Delhi, in this second game of the Open, has switched to 9549. And I think this is just such cool high level hand stuff of like, there was this tiny bit of evidence, this tiny thing that limited what Delhi could do. And Tezuka was able to both read what the options were there and find a way to just completely counter it while using up the card he needed to pick as well, the D card. So incredibly good hand making from Tezuka there. And then I really like Delial's switch to Thomas here, 9549, a card that is normally not that popular, but if he sees the other person overloading on 8s, suddenly becomes really viable. It's of course not a card almost anything in Tezuka's hand is happy to see. The only thing that is 4544, and you don't want to hold on to 4544 too long. The other thing is we're seeing Cypher Squall here, and Cypher Squall tends to favor the first turn player, right? These cards are so good at playing off each other that if whoever has last turn tends to be able to play off the others. On the other hand, if there's nothing else to play off and they happen to not line up on walls, sometimes they just can't take each other. That is the perilous nature of opposite cards, is often they're beautiful together, but sometimes they need just a little extra help. Now, with 10s on them, they are helped by walls. Of course, like 8764s are helped by walls on the 7-4 and the 6-8. 7642s, play off the walls on the 6-2 and the 7-4. There's various versions of this, but sometimes they don't quite click. All right, let's look a little at hands. Delhi's going first, so we'll look at Tezuka's hand first. He has a level 10 and a 9 as opposite corners, 6868 as a sweeper. Notice it completely sweeps the 4544. right? That's a card he can put out and know he's going to have a very easy time taking it. And then an uncovered corner that he is pretty good at taking back and might be challenging for Deli to take, right? At level 6, Tezuka gets a card that Deli can only take with with either a level 9 or 10 from 8 or a level 10 from 4. Now, I didn't look too deeply yet at the first game. It happened before I was around today. But Tezuka started with a weak card in 7, and Deli took it immediately from 8 with Cypher, just putting a 9 out that Tezuka was going to have trouble dealing with. And that was an interesting play. All right, Deli picks up his lowest level card and plays it in 9. Okay, well, the first thing to do is check captures. And quickly we can see that 6868 is not going to be a great capture, but Tezuka has 2 other ways to capture from 8. How's Delial's recaptures? 494A is comboed back, and the other cards both have 4s facing out that are comboed back by 68A2. So would it be possible for Tezuka to play 4544 in 6? Saying, yes, you can take back, but not actually comfortably. Not actually comfortably. So an interesting line there is 45446, Cypher in 8, which sets up 7754 and 5. But then Tezuka can just take the same in 5, right? The reason first turn has the advantage is Cypher can land after Squall. If Cypher lands before Squall, Tezuka's going to have stuff he can do. So 4544 and 6 looks to me potentially appealing. I don't think that can ever be that amazing a winning try, especially against Deli. I think you play something that has play against 8, and some people will lose their minds. Deli won't. Another thing people will do is they'll feel a need to capture something. So they'll go in 3 with something they can capture, but Deli won't feel that need either. I think if Tezuka goes 4544 and 6, my guess for the best move for Deli is 9549 and 3. Saying, okay, I can't take that back immediately, but I don't need to. The standard I've talked about this a ton in my videos, but the standard evaluation of first turn has 1 card that's safe, and second turn is a head 6-4, but both cards are vulnerable in a line, tends to be a pretty balanced game. Second turn has enough optionality, they should be able to find some line that's fairly solid and holds, but they have to defend 2 cards, and they're not going to be able to defend both. And it can be hard to find a square. For instance, Deli can't currently play an 8, right? It's comboed back. But as soon as squares start being filled up, that suddenly becomes a threat again. So it can be weird to fill squares. And I think in general, I think 6 is well met by 3. And I would actually evaluate that as favoring Deli after 9549 and 3. His remaining cards look really good for that game. Now, I don't know if Deli saw that in advance of playing his starter, right? This is a type of line I don't spot starters with this idea, or I only have once. In the finals of Triad Wars 15 against Turds, I saw a kind of similar sack idea with Bomb. But that was when I prepared for the game for an hour in advance and was just looking at ideas and looking at forcing lines. That was not in the confines of a 5-7 minute period. That was I had much more time to try to figure out lines there, so I could explore things I normally wouldn't. So I don't know how players find moves like this if Deli didn't notice that Tezuka had a lot of combo play against his cards in 8, or if he did and saw, I think I have this good response to 6, anytime 6 happens, it gives me 3. How would you reason such that you can find that consistently, right? I realize I'm getting off from the game, but I'm thinking to improve myself as a player, now I think this starter is good. I think if Tezuka can't play 6, I think this starter, fine. Um, maybe Tezuka has other powerful stuff he can do here, but 6 is usually the big problem, the thing that forces you to get yourself in trouble. Um, Maybe how we found it was he was just getting rid of 9 from the board. Like, if you can meet 8, 8, 1, 4, and 7 by going Thomas and 8, that's great, but it can get comboed by Squall and 9, and you were just removing 9. There's so many reasons you could land on this move, but I want to focus on it for this reason. How do you find a sack corner? Meaning, the opponent's going. There's a. I don't think Tezuka will play 6, but like, Tezuka could play 6. You do not have a good recapture, but your position is still pleasant after that. How do you find that? Tezuka has also played starters like this against me, and I got in trouble and was very grateful to sneak a tie and tried was 14, I guess, quarterfinals. Um, so Tezuka has found moves like this. Deli finds moves like this. I do not find moves like this. And when you don't find moves of a type, it could be that that type is not good or that type is not for you, but no one is always happy with the starter they find, right? And so if I want to increase my rate of playing starters I'm happy with, I need to increase the reasons I have to play starters so that when my normal starters don't suffice, I can still come up with reasons to do something else that are reasonable, you know? So how could we think about this? I think we might be able to think about it in terms of half safeties, which is to say 9, 5, 4, 9, and 3, a 9 facing out from 3, is safe to Tezuka's hand. If we think about Tezuka's hand, it is 10s up and down, 9 to the left and right, 9 to the left, 8 to the right. A 9 left is half safe. But for a card there to be safe, it needs to have other squares occupied on that row. Therefore, any starter in 3 or 9 that is weak to a capture in 6. But 9, 5, 4, 9 is only safe if 4, 5, 4, 4 is out of the hand. It would otherwise be covered. Yeah, I have no idea how you find this. Was trying to come up with a reasoning, and I'm just not there. All right, Tezuka uses his lowest level card. He does not set up immediate combo synergy, but this is a card that, like, Squall plays off much better than Cypher does, right? That kind of thing is quickly apparent. It's also a card that we know his 6/8/6/8 is very happy to recapture wherever it might be needed. And it does cover what Delial could do in the opposite corner. He is not ready to follow with Squall in 6. Does he have a threat in 8? He does not have a threat in 8 either, or not a huge threat. Delial's 9s are really powerful here. I think this was kind of. I've seen Delial get criticism, and I've criticized Delial for being too stuck on hands, for making kind of. He finds cards he's comfortable with, and it can be a target. But I think in this match specifically, he has done something. He's an unbelievably adaptable player, but he settles on hands. And he tends to adapt them in kind of small ways that he then will just return to what he was doing before. And I think that it has been a weakness of his. But here we can see he correctly read 6/8/6/8 destroys T. It just crushes the letter T. Tezuka made a genius read in the card he picked with the letter D, and seeing what Deli would do with the letter T. And Deli has adapted. Deli has gone, you've gone 8s, I can beat 8s with 9s. And so I think this is going to be a tricky game for Tezuka. I don't mind his first move at all. I tend not to like moves in 5, but it's usually scary if there's something Deli can do in 6 or 8. So actually, we should be checking those squares. But 8 looks reasonably well covered. I guess 9, 5, 4, 9, and 8 could be an issue because 4, 5, 4, 4 is out of the hand. And 7, 7, 5, 4, and 6 could actually be kind of annoying too. Delial might be able to force the action. I think Tezuka should have tools against both of those. His cards aren't walking into that many combos. But actually, what can Tezuka put in 6? Despite there being a 2 facing up, Tezuka does not have a capture in 6 that isn't covered by Cypher or 494A. So what if Deli plays Thomas in 8? The thing about a 6 facing up from so I guess Tezuka could play 6-8-A2 in 6. If Deli goes Thomas 8, 9-5-4-9, Tezuka could go 6-8-A2 in 6, and Deli can combo that, but Squall combos back quite hard. Or does he? Because that gets potentially comboed back by 4-9-4-A and 1, but because that goes through 2 to hit 5, which hits 6, because 6 is going to be weak to 5, but that gets hit by 8-8-1-4 and 4, and there's no combo at the end of the line. But any chain that has that many combo points in it means you have to pause and think, okay, if Deli has the combo in 1 there, if he can set up a combo anywhere else, it's game over. I don't think he can. I think you do hold there. Yeah, I think that's a tie. But, oh man, that's a messy line. So 9-5-4-9 and 8 is probably what I would play because that is very much my style of find something forcing that is very hard for them to play a critical response. Because the other thing is, if you start Thomas in 8 and they go 6-8-A2 in 6, like, you don't have to go in 3 immediately and take the combo, right? You can play 7-7-5-4 and 7. That's actually safe, and you still have these huge threats in 3. They have to block 3 at some point, and you have everything in 3 covered because 4-9-4-A has sames off the card in 5. I think Thomas in 8 is very appealing. I think this is much more my style than Deli's, which is to say Deli plays some of everything and it is firmly in his range, but a lot of other moves are also in his range. But for me, I would just focus in on this as a move. I know I cannot lose the resulting game. Like, no computer, no solver is going to beat me if I go 8. Um, Sometimes I'll like think things like that and not say it because whenever I do say something like that, I flip on the solver and it's like, oh yeah, that move loses. But I'm pretty confident here, right? I'm pretty confident that 9-5-4-9 and 8 cannot lose the game. And it also, I think, puts my opponent to a really difficult decision. Maybe Squall in 7 is the best reaction. And it is in Tezuka's range to find that kind of move. I'm not saying 8 is the best move. I'm saying it is the move that fits my general desire in a move, which is I won't lose, and I think it gives my opponent a real decision to make. And just any good player, like, you face 3 or 4 tough decisions, you're gonna get one wrong. We're just you might get the first one wrong. Ooh, Deli goes 6. So this is also a hard card to take, but Deli is not relying in the same way on combos in 8. Huh. Similar idea, yet different. So 6-8-A2 is very likely going to be overworked. And Squall may never have a square, right? This is playing against Squall. Squall can't land in 3, can't land in 8, or at least can't land happily in either of those squares. But really can't land in those squares. Can't go in 3 or 8, and as play develops out from those squares, Squall's not going to find a home. Also, 6-8-A2 is the only capture in 3, and if you go, say, 8-8-1-4 and 8, and they capture from 7, 6-8-A2 is again going to be kind of the only tool you have to capture stuff. So you have a question. How do you use Squall, and how do you hold on to 6-8-A2? Right? How do you find uses for your other cards? All right. Critical moves are 3 and 8. My strong instinct between those is you go in 8 because you don't have to use 6-8-A-2 there. Well, you do have to use 6-8-A-2 and 3 if you want to capture. And I do want to capture. Oh, I just got some bonkers ideas. It's a dumb idea. But I was thinking if you could go in 7 and Deli had to block 8 and 8 had to flip 5, which sadly it doesn't because of 494A, but if it did have to flip 5 and you could land 6-8-A-2 and 4, comboing through 5 to 6 to 9 and maybe back to 8, um, you're vulnerable to a combo in 1, but you can same wall that back, so they probably go in 3 at the end, you block 1. You're probably doing okay there because you comboed so many cards. Um, so there's some potential for bonkers ideas, but I think you don't want to do that, right? The best use of time here is going to be, does 8 work? Does 3 work? And only then do you go creative. So which card would you put in 8? Well, you don't want it to be 6-8-A-2, and Squall doesn't work, so it's 8-8-1-4, 6-8-6-8, right? It has to be 8-8-1-4, unless you really want to limit which cards they can capture with. But I don't think that makes too much difference here. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Okay, so this is a real decision because 6-8-6-8 cannot be captured by Thomas. So if you go 6-8-6-8 and they capture with Cypher, you same back. Squall had a use. If they capture with 4-9-4-A, that seems okay as well. You can play Squall and 4, and at least you grabbed 7. And I think that should be fine, right? 6-8-6-8 and 8, you're up 6-4. They capture with 4-9-4-A, it's 5-5, Maduin maybe. You play A4, 6-9, and 4, you're up 6-4. They're going to win the card back in 5. They'll play like Thomas in 3, and they'll either take 2 or 5 with Cypher at the end. But you do tie there. So 6-8-6-8 and 8, and Cypher doesn't want to take that because that gets samed. And there's no combo back, even though there is a plus wall. Now 4-9-4-A sweeps the endgame pretty well there, but you're down enough that it's gonna be fine. Okay, so if 6-8-6-8 and 8, Deli should probably go 3 with 9-5-4-9. But then Squall has use, right? Then Squall has use. A4, 6-9, 7, say. I think 6-8-6-8 and 8 probably holds. But that's a tough move to play because the first instinct is certainly going to be 8-8-1-4. So the question is, does 8-8-1-4 hold? And I think the problem line is Thomas and 7. So 8-8-1-4-8, Thomas 7. If 6-8-A-2 and 4, so you went in 8, making it 6-4. They went 7, making it 5-5. You go 4, making it 6-4. If they combo you, you combo back. So they should go in 3. You have to block 1. You block 1 with Squall. Cypher captures 1 card. I think that should tie 2. I think 8 is ties, but you gotta check 1 as well. That was a problem. In the game Akiyama lost versus Delial lost versus Akiyama, the open game. Basically it was a similar position to this with the tie and the equivalent of 8, but Delial got scared of a move in 1, and I didn't notice that move at all. And there was only 1 tie against that, and it was not easy to find. And so he quite reasonably saw something deep in the line that scared him off the line, and he was moved off the correct move to a different idea because he saw further than I did, right? And I think here it's just very I see 2 moves in 8. One of them might just die to 1. I haven't checked 1 at all. I've checked 3, I've checked 7. I haven't checked 1. Hopefully, for Tezuka's sake, he has used his time more efficiently than I have talking about it. I think one of the moves in 8 has to be the best move. I think it's really easy to start that doesn't work, 3 doesn't work, I have to do something in 1, 4, 7, some square like that, probably 1 or 4. And I think when you do that, you are you are not actually making it harder for the opponent unless 8 really does just not work at all. But I think, yeah. So he does go 1, but I think you have to try to make 8 work. I think you have to try to make 8 work. On the other hand, Deli does not have much play against this card. But on the other hand, uh, where's Tezuka's play against any of Deli's cards? Tezuka has a same in 4. Okay, so like the obvious move for Deli is something like Thomas in 8 when it appears everything's safe, but in fact, nothing is safe. Because Squall in 4 combos everything. But Squall in 4 is just comboed back by Cypher in 7 whenever it lands. And that does combo everything, because Squall in 4 goes through 5 to 6 to 9 to Thomas in 8. And so when Cypher, sure, it's same Squall, and that's Squall's just saming stuff, it doesn't flip anything extra, but it's going to flip Thomas, which is going to start the whole chain again. And after Thomas in 8, Tezuka has his only other trick is around having plus walls in 2 of the card in 1, but Deli can't accidentally flip the card in 1. There's no variation where he's going to flip 1. Yeah, he's never forced to flip 1. So I think Deli can just go Thomas in 8 here. And I think this is just fundamentally how good players lose, right? And how good players win. Is you pose a difficult question to the opponent where, let's just say 8 ties. I do not know if it does. If it doesn't, then I have absolutely no complaints about what Tezuka has done. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that 8 ties. And this applied to Deli last round. It has certainly applied to myself. 8 ties, but it is hard to visualize all of it. It is hard to calculate, and it kind of looks like it maybe doesn't work. And there's the question, do you start looking for ideas elsewhere? Or do you try to make it work? And you see something scary and you can't quite make it work, so you do something else that is vaguer, that you're not going to have been able to calculate near as much of. In part because you've already spent a bunch of time on 8 or on 3, but in part just because it is so much vaguer. It gives your opponent so many more options. I think 8 is winning for Deli, but Deli might be looking at 3. Deli might be looking at completely different squares. I mean, it's Deli. He's probably looking at like 7. But, Deli's looking at something completely different as well. And, there might be other moves that win as well. Again, assuming 8 wins and assuming 8 was a tie. But yeah, I think you put people in enough tough situations, and at some point, something in their head won't click, right? They won't. 8 won't look like a tie to them. Again, we're assuming 8 was a tie. It might not have been. It might have been that Tezuka saw further and more accurately than I did, and 8 didn't work. This is why I argue for playing standard moves and spending time on standard moves, is because I do think it holds more often, but it does mean I miss really creative ideas. And this also came up in last round's Delial versus Akiyama. When I would not have tied a position, I evaluated a move as a tie, spent a while looking at it, was like, yep, that ties. Oh no, what has Deli done? And then it looked to me like Deli had lost, and I calculated a line and thought it was a loss. And after the game, Deli's like, recount. And I did, and it turns out Deli was way ahead of me. I was wrong. The move I thought was an easy tie was a loss, and the move he played was not a loss. It was a tie. The idea I found against it was a tie, not a win. So point is, like, you watch good players play, they're putting more concentration in than you are. There is a very good chance that they saw something you didn't. And if they didn't play the line and you were right, it also indicates there's something interesting in that line they saw that scared them off, right? Either Tezuka saw something really strong with this move in 1, but I think he saw the same in 4. I think he saw he had some synergies and couldn't find something else beneficial in the position, so he went for the beneficial thing he could find. I think he doesn't think 1 is a great move, right? He's not like, yes, I've played 1, I've won the game. but he did see something scary with 8, and there's a good chance it was in 1. And if so, I didn't check it, right? I can't be like, yeah, totally got that covered. But again, I think this is how high level games are won. This was not, this was 6 moves left in the game, so this is beyond kind of human ability to just perfectly calculate out the rest of the game with all variations, right? You're going to have to calculate narrower lines. Like, you're not going to check everything, you're going to check a few lines deeply. And you can check those few lines to the end. But again, you can't check everything. You can multiply out how many moves you'd have to calculate and how quickly. It's just not going to happen. No human is checking every move to the end with 6 moves to go. Uh, I mean, maybe people whose brains work a bit differently, but I don't think any human that's ever actually played does that. So instead, what you have is, this is the point when great players can make mistakes that aren't like horrible blunders, and it just takes one thing not clicking in the kind of main lines to move off them and have to try to find other ideas. Now, Deli's taking a long time here. With some people, I would take that as an indication that he's not seeing anything. With Deli, I would take it as an indication that it's Deli and he always takes all his time. Now, let's say 9549 and 8 does win. And again, I don't want to be super confident that my lines are correct. They could easily be wrong. There is a chance Deli doesn't play it because he sees this same in 4 and thinks it is more important to block the square of 4 than it is to take the same in 8, to take the useful square in 8. Now, I think you look one move further and you realize 8 must be okay. But you could again, okay, he goes 3. And as I was about to say, you can get scared off, right? And also, this might just win as well. And again, I'm assuming the other move won. Okay. What? So Deli has no combos at the moment, and he can't set up combos. So can Tezuka hold? Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say is the benefit of moves like 1 is all it takes, because we still have 5 moves left in the game. This is still the range that top level players make mistakes. All you need is for your opponent's brain to not click around one move, and suddenly you might be back in it. So I don't mean to criticize 1 that much. I think this is both how high level games are lost, but also sometimes how high level games are held. All right. So if Tezuka goes in 2, I think 8 is the more likely move, but let's just say something in 2. Let's say 8814, just for the sake of argument. If Deli goes either card in 4, he will take a 6-4 lead. Tezuka will go 6-8, 6-8, and 8. He will take a 6-4 lead. Deli will capture back, and we have a tie. If Deli goes in 8 with 6-9-8-4, he takes a 6-4 lead. Tezuka combos back everything. Tezuka wins. If he goes with 4-9-4-A, then he has anything in 4 covered with Cypher, and if Tezuka goes in 7, Cypher will at least flip 5, and if Tezuka combos in 7, then suddenly Cypher combos 2. All right, 8814 and 2 is not a tie. Okay. I think that means 2 can't tie. I think anything in 2 is met by 4-9-4-A in 8. Okay, so it has to be 8. Let's check 6-8, 6-8, and 8. Tezuka goes up 6-4. If Deli plays either card in 2, he makes it 5-5. I think Deli plays 4-9-4-A in 2 because Cypher sweeps the endgame. Yeah. So I think 8 loses. So I think this is a win for Deli. I liked my line because, of course, I did. Because the version you see is always going to be the one that like clicks better in your head. To me, this line seems more complicated, but easily to someone else's brain, my line would seem more complicated. Also, we can't be entirely sure I calculated my line correctly. But this does look to me like a win. Because 494A doesn't flip 5, so there's no combo back, and Cypher sweeps. Can you do something bananas in 7? No, because against anything like that, 494A just goes in 2 and it's over. Yeah, I think he's done it. I'm going to go bring up the solver on the side because I am curious. But I think Deli has advanced to his second TTAC finals and could become the second person to ever win 2 TTACs. Also, I want to reiterate, Tezuka's streak was so cool. The just literally not losing a single game until he faced Deli, basically. Not just basically, until he faced Deli. All right, so Deli, Tezuka this game had 4-5-4-4, 6-8-8-2, 6-8-6-8, 8-4-6-9, 8-8-1-4. Also, great hand reads. This has been a really, really good game. And Tezuka had 2-3. Deli had 2-3-6-6, 7-7-5-4, 6-9-8-4, 9-5-4-9, 4-9-4-A. 4-9-4-A is played quite well here. Not a card type I tend to use much, the like horizontal vertical A9s. Especially on level 9. I use them a bit more on level 10. I quite like Ramza. But alright. So Deli's starter was 2-3-6-6 and 9. And my instinct was that the main line is 4-5-4-4 and 6 is well met by 9-5-4-9 and 3. 9-5-4-9 and 3 is a tie. Tezuka has 6 ties there. That's not so bad. My move in 6 is a tie, but I assume the move played was a tie as well. That's not something to brag about here. So Tezuka plays 5. And Solver's taking a little while. Deli plays this move in 6. I was thinking 8, so I'm going to check both. Alright. Yeah, I think Tezuka's move is non-losing, but gave Deli a lot of options. Right? Like, it's not, it doesn't lose the game, but it makes it difficult. So 8, my move in 8 gave up 4 ties, and Deli's move in 6 gave up 4 ties. Does 8-8-1-4 and 8 tie? Yes. Looks like barely, but yes. Does 6-8-6-8 and 8 tie? Yes. Also, one of those moves like, you're the one under pressure, but they both do tie. He played 6-8-A2 and 1, which concedes 2 wins. One was 9-5-4-9 in 8. And, this move doesn't win. All right, I've missed something huge here. I've missed something huge. 8-8-1-4 and 8 ties? He's played it in 2. Why does it tie? I thought 4-9-4-A and 2. Oh, that flips 5. There's a same in 2. I didn't realize there was the same in 2. 4-9-4-A and 2 does flip 5, so there is a combo back there. Oh, I miscalculated that. Oh, man. And now Deli is winning with 4-9-4-A and 8. But I bet Tezuka missed just what I did. And that's what I meant about the brain sometimes doesn't click. Is moves in 8, it looked to me lost to 4-9-4-A and 2. And I suspect you, the viewer, noticed this. That sames, that flips 5. That doesn't just flip 1 without flipping 5. And if it flips 5, the combo back is fine. That's a rough miss. But also, I missed it too. Missing stuff with 4 moves left to go feels terrible. But I think this game is 2 things. 1, Clearly had a bunch of mistakes. Two, it is two very good players playing at a high level. It is two top level players playing at a high level. And so it is the kind of mistakes that happen in that kind of game, right? And that's going to feel bad, you know, if you're on the losing side of that, that will feel bad. But oh man, I missed the ties here too, right? Um, yeah, either of the moves in 8 hold because 494A has the same. I missed it had the same, and so I didn't realize extra stuff flipped. Actually, that's something in general I think Tezuka is very impressive with is understanding when 5 flips and how to use that. And um, we all make mistakes around stuff, but this is actually something I think Tezuka does, for instance, better than I do, and is more likely to notice the correct stuff around than I am. Good move by 6 by Deli. Um, I had an instinct for 8 rather than 6, but as is often the case, Deli found the version of the move, and again, there were the same number of ties against both. It was a good try. It was just as good a try as my move, but Deli finds the move that keeps better cards in his hand, and Deli is very good about that. Yeah, this is the way games are lost, and this is the way games are won. And it's not going to be like solver perfect, but it's going to be, can you create a problem? And if you create a problem, like a tricky problem, something where the standard looking moves look really crappy, you create a situation where the normal moves look crappy. They may or may not work, but they look crappy. That's a tough situation for the opponent. And that's a press. That's what pressing is, in my eyes, is the normal moves look bad. Maybe they hold, maybe they don't, and they have to find an unusual move. But either way, you press a few times, everyone folds. No one is always going to have that click. Um, and so the goal is to minimize the number of times you are in a position where you need stuff to click. And that's why some of my starter decisions and my early game decisions are so much like after cards in 5 and 9, I just want to play an 8 because I know the game, nothing's going to not click after that. I'm avoiding the situations where, like, if I go 1, maybe they go somewhere that makes it messy and confusing, and my brain doesn't work for that. So I'm trying to minimize how often I am put in those positions. But that also means I don't maximize how often I put my opponents in those positions. And I think there are players, both of these players included, that do a better job of that kind of maximizing. Um, then there's the question of how often can you press your opponent, and then there is the question of, can you raise your rate of surviving positions that are horrible, right? Can you minimize the damage you take? Can you be like, yeah, I can find the move in 8 here more reliably than other players can? It's tough. Huge congrats to Deli. Um, he makes yet another finals. Also, this run from Tezuka was so, so good. Genuinely one of the two most impressive things done in TTAC history. Is it Broccoli winning the first TTAC, then disappearing from the site for years, coming back 8 years later to win her first TTAC back? Probably, but Tezuka won 6 consecutive rounds against really good opponents without dropping a game. Like, he 2-0'd Vid last round. He 2-0'd Piggyman in the finals of TTAC 14 after beating Chickeny. He's 2-0ing Chickeny before that. Just destroying both in the open games as well. Incredible level play. And Piggyman had just crushed me, right? You might think, like, Piggyman's great, but not one of the absolute top. And, like, maybe. But, like, also, Piggyman had just obliterated me. He had just beaten me, realized he broke Stips, and beat me again, right? Like, just destroyed me. Um, So yeah, Tezuka, unbelievable run, would not lose a game. Oops, just knocked something off the table. Would not lose a game until he met Delial here, and Delial takes it to advance to the finals, which leads me to one last thing, which is the very first time and the only other time that someone has lost in the quarterfinals and been reinstated in the semifinals. They went on to win that semifinals. It was Beast Day, now it is Vid, and they went on to win the finals against the best player who had ever played that had the first letter of their name starting with D. And at that time it was Doc Evil, and this time it's Delial. Will history repeat? Obviously, I will be rooting for Delial, as I so often do, but I do want to again say, what a run by Tezuka. He has been so impressive. He just tied the record for most icons in a row, and somehow that's not even the most impressive streak he's had in the return. Uh, yeah, Tezuka has been phenomenal in tournaments. I loved the 6-8-6-8 pick here, and I love Delhi's adaptation to it, right? I love Delhi going, I have to go full nines, right? I'm not going to beat eights with normal cards. I'm going to beat them with, 9-9-5-4s. Usable cards, but not very popular ones. And 9-5-4-9 played incredibly this game. Great read by Delhi on what would play well against Tezuka's hand. And honestly, if Delhi is an adaptive hand maker as well as the level of play he sustains, like, very difficult to beat, right? Right? You take Delhi and you turn his weakness not just into like neutral, but into a genuine strength. What are we doing, right? Uh, so if Delhi is making reads and adjustments this good, and I think this was a phenomenal adjustment, then yeah, yeah, very very deserving winner here. But I think Tezuka's 6-8-6-8 use here was brilliant, and I really enjoyed this match, and I hope you did too.